and by His blood our sins are washed away. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. His name is Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God. All nations kneel and glorify the Lord. Let all the earth tremble, for He comes, and He will judge the living and the dead. The Son of Man coming on the clouds will trumpet sound, and every knee will bow and tongue confess the name above all names. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. His name is Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. His name is Wonderful Counselor, Almighty He is Counselor. He is Mighty God. He's the Prince of Peace. The Omnipotent. He is wonderful. He is radiant. The Almighty God. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. His name is Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. His name is Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God. Praise your holy, holy, holy name. The name truly above every other name. The name high and exalted. The name with all power and authority over sickness, darkness, disease, all manner of ailment, over suicide. All hail the name of Jesus. All bow before the name of Jesus. All hail the name of Jesus. And we worship you. We give our lives to you. Oh, we sing out. Oh, we cry out.
Hello.
Everybody, come take your seats. We are going to do our raffle. We're going to call 3 numbers. We're going to mix them up here. Okay, first one.
We have 645 617.
617. Anybody?
All right.
All right, Ben, come on down. Pick a book. Come on down. You're the next winner. All right, go ahead. Pick another one.
All right.
Oh, that's a good idea. Send the wife to make the choice.
Next
That's
one
the
is
best
645 679.
Woohoo!
Woo!
All right.
And last is 645 681. All right.
Nice job. Very exciting. Very good. Okay, we'll do this again later.
At the end.
At the end.
All right.
Anyway.
Okay.
Okay. The next concept that we're going to talk about is easy versus hard. And this really is, if you choose the easy way now, as a parent or just in life in general, it will become hard later. And if you choose the hard way now, the right way now, your life does get easier later. And we can see that in our marriage. We can see that in our parenting. We can see that in our walk with the Lord. Doing the hard, right thing bears the most and the most beautiful fruit.
I would say this, and when it comes to parenting, we have had so much focus on like nurturing behavior toward our kids when they're small, and like an overabundance of nurturing and loving toward our kids and less structure. But think of it this way: you're being nice and kind to your kids' future self.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to choose the hard thing now, which is structure and authority and submission, that sort of stuff, because it's going to lead to beautiful fruit later. So so you're delaying a sense of kindness to your kid. You are being kind to your kid at the early ages, but you're being kind to their future self, because you know that doing the hard things for your kids now will produce beautiful things later on. They'll have a better life later on, and so you're being kind to their future selves. And the same is for you guys. If you do hard things now, you're being kind to your future self.
So one example of doing the hard thing now is when Peter first started driving, he did not have a cell phone, which meant he also did not have GPS, which meant that he always, if he had to leave and go anywhere, he had to study a map to know how to get there, which he grumbled about. He didn't quite like, but we did.
He just wanted a phone.
Yeah, he really wanted a phone. It's true. But actually, it became the most beautiful fruit because he knows where he is on the map kind of at all times. And he knows how to get himself home. He knows how to find the highways. He knows it all. And that was, I don't know that it was really expected.
Well, we looked at it in the sense of, like, I grew up not having a cell phone when I grew up. And I had to drive with maps in my car and try to figure out where I was. And what it produced is not only knowing of the Portland metro area, but just directionally. He went one time down to Sherwood and got lost, took a wrong turn. But he's like, well, I'm heading north. I know that's where I need to go. And so he just kept going north. And he says, finally, I started to recognize certain places, and I eventually found out where I was. And I later told him, I said, yeah, you would eventually run into, like, Sunset Highway. And then you know where you are. But he goes, oh, yeah, I knew where I was on Farmington. Perfect. Like, he knew where he was. And I thought to myself, in this day and age, especially for a boy who is driving, I thought to myself, everyone else in the world has a cell phone. Peter doesn't know any strangers. He could basically pull over and go, can I use your phone to make a quick phone call? Or can you tell me where I am? I'm not lost. He's resourceful to that. I would have thought very differently if my daughter was my first driver. That would have been a little bit different. But it does produce, the hard thing did produce beautiful fruit.
Okay, another thing that we've mentioned a couple of times is, where will this lead? This is a very valuable thing for you to be remembering as a parent. If I allow this behavior, where will it lead? Now, it's not always obvious, because in the modern parenting styles, they tell you in these books that it's going to lead to this fruit. They're wrong about that, but we as parents don't always know. This is where discernment comes in. But sometimes we can ask the question, where will it lead if I don't require my 2-year-old to eat the food that I give them? it's going to lead to them not having a healthy nutrition, or to allow them to think that they don't like certain food.
They get to be picky eaters.
They don't get to be picky eaters. You don't get to not like cheese. That's not a thing. You have to eat the cheese, and you have to learn to like it. And in part of that, it's like just telling yourself to believe true things. You can conform your mind, and you can tell yourself you like it. I started making kefir because I'm hoping to help my immunity. It smells like sour milk. And I'm like, oh, what did I get myself into? But the thing is, you can tell yourself that you like the kefir, and that actually the more you drink it and the more you tell yourself you like the kefir, you start to like the kefir. That's a really good lesson. Drink the kefir.
Well, and you want to talk about this?
Oh, yes. One thing that I can say on the other end of things is when my kids were young, Eleanor really did not like the crust on her bread for the sandwiches we would have for lunch. And I remember thinking, our value is that we eat what's in front of us, and we eat it all. We are not people who waste food. So our value is you take it and you're grateful. But what I could see, I was discerning that this is growing in her heart, that my mom is not for me because she makes this food for me every day, and it's a battle every day. And so I felt like I needed to release her from that, and I did. I told her, okay, I understand. She's like 4, maybe she was almost.
I think she was 4, yeah.
Yeah, she was 4.5. And I told her, I understand that you don't like bread crusts, so I'm going to cut them off of your sandwiches for a time. And that's okay, because you're little. But big kids eat their bread crusts. 6-year-olds are big kids. You can eat your bread crust when you're 6. And so I started that early. And the beautiful fruit that happened from that is that she knew that that was the expectation down the line. That's what it meant to be mature. And when she was about 5.5, she asked me, Mom, don't cut off my bread crust today. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. And she did. From that day on, she ate the bread crusts on her sandwich. But it didn't lead to the, I guess, the more authoritarian style of parenting where it's my way or the highway. She could see my heart for her, and she could still see the expectation of it.
And she wanted to identify with being a big kid, which
Yeah.
almost every kid wants to do. They want to see themselves as older and more mature than they really are, and that's a calling to it. Like, hey, you can set expectations for your kids in that same way. Like, hey, when you get this area, or get to this age, you must be able to do these sort of things, and just watch how they will rise to that challenge. And what I see oftentimes in a lot of parents is that we want to keep like the baby and the child, and they'll often undershoot them. Like, even though they're 5 and 6, they treat them like little 2 and 3-year-olds. And it's like, well, that's not helping your kids to grow in maturity. That's like a self-fulfilling thing you're trying to prove.
The other thing that I want to point out is that I felt like it was the Holy Spirit who was teaching me that. And so it is really important that we are prayerful all the time, because God gives us what we need in the moment.
Yes.
And he was helping me to see where she was, and not to be authoritarian about it, but to meet the needs and set the expectations, to be loving and nurturing. And God does equip us when we ask.
The next point is that we want to protect their innocence. And this is something that is being robbed from kids left and right. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes we put things in front of our kids that the culture puts in front of the kids without any thought to where it will go. The one I'm thinking of is like video games and movies. Like, you'll hear other parents say, "Oh yeah, my 7-year-old watched this movie," and you're like, "That I can't believe you actually let them watch that type of." There's violence. There's some sexual connotations going on there. You shouldn't be placing that in front of them. And oftentimes people will say like, "Well, they can handle it."
Can handle it.
But that's not the standard, whether they can handle it or not. And really, in reality, it's like, you don't know what your kids can handle. You're not tuned in enough.
You also don't always know that it's not going to cause nightmares, we knew somebody who was showing horror movies to his, well, maybe they weren't horror movies. They were rated R, like Predator and Child's Play. I don't understand. First of all, as Christians, should we be watching stuff like that? No, we should not.
Yeah.
But we also would not show that to our children. And I think she was like,
She's like 11.
yeah. And then, you know, when she grows and she's in middle school and she has fear of going to school every day or walking to school, you just wonder, are you connecting it back to the things that you planted in there early on with planting fear? Where's that going to lead? It's going to bear fruit. That weed is going to grow. Another thing I want to think about when I'm, you know, wanting to protect the innocence of our children, sometimes that means you have to tell your children no when they want to do something that's not age appropriate. And I'm thinking, you know, of young girls wanting to dress and act like they're 18 or like they're 20, with the things that they're wearing, with the makeup that they're putting on, or with the nails, trying to be super attractive. This is something that is, I think, destroying young women, because it's been planted so early, and moms enjoy doing those things with their little girls, which is okay, but you need to set standards and expectations on that. Once in a while, when you play makeup when they're 5 or when they're 10 is not the same thing, but that's something you do at home. You don't go out to the occasion with children wearing makeup or having their nails done in an extravagant way, things like that. It's okay to kind of do those at home, but then set the boundaries. No, you're not going to have that kind of a haircut. That's an adult haircut. I'm not going to pay $150 or whatever for you to have that specific hairstyle done. You're a child. You're not going to behave like an adult.
Well, and our girls are 16 and almost 18, and we still, basically all the time, tell them what they can and can't wear. Eleanor will go out shopping, and she will text mom pictures of a dress she's thinking of getting, and she weighs in and says, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, that's too revealing, it's too low cut, that really shows off way too much, we're not doing that. And that's a cultivation over many, many years of doing that her entire life.
Mom and Dad have the say.
Yeah, because she sees a cute dress, and that's all she sees. She doesn't see how it reveals her, and she's going to be around 17 and 18-year-old boys, and women in general have no idea what that does to young men. They're blind, they're ignorant, however you want to say it. They have no idea, and so we weigh in on that, and 18 is not too old.
They also don't know what it's going to teach themselves when they're 13 and wearing clothes like an 18-year-old. That is training their own self. They're allowing themselves to think those things, and where does it lead? We have to be telling them what to think. Nope, that's not for you. You're too young for that. And so sometimes it's not just keeping the culture out, it's also correcting their thoughts to that. You said it, you decide, and don't allow them to ask for more. I mean, they're going to ask, but you are maintaining the structure and the protection for them.
Right.
Okay.
Early years?
We can move on. We're okay. We're doing okay on time.
For now. Okay.
Okay, we're going to move on.
The early years.
The early years. And these are like just sets of ideas for you to think about when your kids are young. We already talked about the entire goal for parenting is to teach your children submission. And this is loving authority, loving submission. We want to always include the loving part of it. But the submission is the goal for you as parents to remember. They have to come under your authority.
So things like in the early years, sleep training really needs to be a part of it. We mentioned this last night about how some parenting philosophies are you just put your kids in the room and they decide when to fall asleep on their own. And really it's the job of the parents to cultivate structure around bedtime. Obviously in the early years, routines become the really easy thing to do and to slip into. Like, we're going to brush your teeth, we're going to maybe take a bath, we're going to get into your jammies, we're going to read a book, we're going to pray, and then you're going to lay down. But the idea is that you're going to help your kid fall to sleep by creating this ongoing structure, and you demand that they stay in their bed. They don't get to come up and ask for water or go to the bathroom or do those sort of things. And that, obviously, if you have young kids, you know that's already a battle. Like, they're excited. They don't want to go to bed. They want to stay up and be a part of everything. But you have to toe the line and say, it's time for you to be in bed. Be there with your eyes closed and your mouth closed, which will be super annoying to your kids. But they have to learn that this is the structure you're putting into place, that it's time for you to go to sleep now.
And it's also irrelevant that it's annoying to your kids because they're trying to tell you that I don't like that or whatever.
I don't feel tired. Irrelevant.
That's irrelevant.
Yeah.
We don't always say those things to our kids, though. You need to know that when we're telling you, we're just telling you what we think in our minds. That's not necessarily how we speak to them. Like, I don't always say, that's a victim statement to my child, and when I'm correcting them, no. We forgot to mention this point. We didn't know this when our kids were little, but when we had the foster children, we figured out the best language was use your strong words. And that's when they would change from the, I need water, to, may I have water? Or whatever it is they were asking for, we would say, use your strong words. It's just, what we said with our kids was start over.
Yeah.
Start over, every time. So anyway, I'm sorry we didn't get that right there. That was an important point. But going back to the sleep training, it's irrelevant that they're not tired because it's time for bed. And we're establishing and we're maintaining patterns and structure. And it's actually the best thing for them that they have a consistent bedtime every night and that they learn to lay down and to go to sleep. And actually what's interesting, when our kids were older and they were having struggles with ADD and we were talking to the doctor, he was telling us that a lot of times kids with ADD can't fall asleep at night. And I was praising the Lord that that's not our kids' issue. They lay down and they're asleep within a minute. But that's a result of the structured sleep time.
Yeah. Another thing during the early years you want to focus on is eating habits. And what I mean two things on this one. One is that the food that they're presented, they have to eat. And you can help them do it, but oftentimes, I have this story where Peter really does not like Brussels sprouts. To this day, he does not like Brussels sprouts, and I don't understand why, because
they're so delicious.
We make the best Brussels sprouts. I grew up with Brussels sprouts. My mom would only just steam them and then serve them with mayonnaise, and like the whole house reeked of like steamed Brussels sprouts. It's in my opinion, it's one of the worst ways to make them. We make them to be delicious. Yeah, and so
good.
But he doesn't like them, and that has not changed the fact that he's eaten a lot of Brussels sprouts in his life. Throughout his entire life, he's had Brussels sprouts on his plate. And it started with like, you're going to eat 2 of these. Then as he grew up, it became like 4, then 6. Now he gets a big heaping, and he kind of grumbles about it. But he just does it. He just eats them. And I helped him. Like, it's better if you eat them when they're warm. Eat the first thing off your plate. Just power through, get it done, then eat the things you want to do. But you're not going to like shove it off to the side and not eat it, because you're going to eventually eat it no matter what. You'll eat it tomorrow morning if you need to. And when it's cold and dried out and gross, but that's what we've served you. We also had during with the foster kids, we would serve a sandwich, and one of them would basically deconstruct it. He would pull it apart and then eat each individual piece, the meat and the cheese and the lettuce and then the bread. And then a lot of parents are like, well, what's the difference of it anyway? It's just, it's all the same thing. It's all going in the same place. What do I care? The problem is that it's his way versus our way, and it's also saying that I need to have control over this situation, and it's not orderly. It's not how it's meant to be, and it's basically him trying to usurp authority.
And where will that lead? If they're always destructing their food to make sure that the food doesn't touch, is that maturity? Can a 7-year-old eat a sandwich? Yes, a 7-year-old should be eating the sandwich all together. When you go out into a public place, are you going to pull apart your food and use your fingers? No. So we can maintain that boundary early. And when they're little, especially in these early years, it's really it's one of the most important things for you as parents to be sewing in. You are the authority and you're maintaining the boundary. The children are staying under. You're telling them what they're going to do, and you're teaching them, well, there's a lot of fruit that comes with them learning to take what you give them and to be grateful for it. They're not going to throw the food on the floor.
Yeah,
They're not going to separate out. They're not going to pick out the
the onions or the tomatoes or whatever else. The second thing in the eating habits is that when they get old enough to be able to use utensils, that you require that to be the case, and they don't start eating with their fingers all the time. We were just recently at a restaurant, and there's this kid right next to me in the next table, and he was probably maybe 8, maybe 10 even, and he was spaghetti with his fingers, and the mom's right next to him, and I'm sure she doesn't fight that battle at home. She's not fighting it at a restaurant, at an event that we're at, and it's like, that should be fought. Like, it's one thing if it's like the kid was like, months old. I get that, no problem. But this kid was old enough to use a utensil, and he actually started using it, but it was clumsy, and so he stopped and just started eating with his hands. One of the foster kids had like a manipulative problem with his hands. He had like this mirroring thing. If he did it with one hand, he did it with the other hand.
It was like this.
So he was kind of at a disadvantage. We're gonna push the point where even though your kids have some sort of disadvantage or disability, you still require them to do the best they can with what they have. You don't make unnecessary excuses for them to say, well, it's over nurturing to go like, well, he's got this, so therefore require much less of him. No, still require as much as you can, and because kids are very adaptable, they can do way more things than we give them credit for. Make them eat with utensils.
Yes. Okay. Another thing that's very important for these young years are they need to learn self-control. We did talk about that a little bit during the spanking time. That tantrums get spankings. And this is what is building in self-control for children. And it's very important that they learn it in the early years. It gets harder and harder to deal with self-control issues when they're older. When it's appropriate to be spanking them young, you can do that. But what happens you've got a 15-year-old who's having a tantrum, that is a lot harder to discipline and to deal with and to get under self-control.
One of the things we also mentioned this during discipline, like spanking as well, but like self-control tantrums and spanking, you can tell your kids to cry quietly. Oftentimes when they're losing their self-control and they're crying, maybe they got hurt even, we'd ask them, you don't have to inflict, you don't have to tell everyone how bad it hurts. And you can tell as I can tell with my kids. Just like when kids are crying in the other room, you can tell, is this something I need to pay attention to, or are they just fussing? Oh, that sounds like that's a problem. Like I should go check on them. Versus, that just sounds like they're just fussing. I'm not gonna deal with that.
Or they're just trying to let everybody know.
Yeah, parents are really good at discerning this, and so you can tell your kids, you can cry about this, but you need to cry quietly about this.
You may not carry on.
Yes, even in times of spanking, when you're spanking and they're just thrashing about. It's like you may cry, but you need to have even self-control in the crying. You get to set the bar and the expectation on this and not allow them to abuse you with their voice and their screaming and their thrashing. They don't get to do that. That's also a lack of self-control. And really in tantrums and punishing for tantrums, you're trying to have them understand that they can have control over these situations to a degree. I like this one here too. One of the also things with self-control is that little kids will often interrupt because their demands are high in their mind. Like, I need to get this taken care of. I'm thirsty. So mom and dad are having a conversation. I'm going to come up and do this to her until I get my way, and then I'm going to interrupt. And interruptions, you need to train them they need to have self-control. They need to know their place. When I'm having a conversation with mom, we train them to come up and stand there. Like, we see you, we're aware that you're there, but don't be hitting me and saying, I am thirsty, feed me, give me my needs, instead of just like, I see you.
You can wait.
You can wait. And I had an opportunity where I saw this, where this little girl was trained this way. I was talking to a man, and we were having a discussion, and she walks up. We were aware of her. We saw her there, but we didn't have a chance to really attend to her because we were in the middle of a conversation. And then, a couple minutes went by, and she just left. And I thought to myself, that kid was trained. That didn't just happen naturally. She was told by her parents, you interrupt when they address you. You don't make demands upon them. And I actually think that she was old enough and trained well enough that had there been like a real emergency, she would have like just interrupted, like, my brother's bleeding, come and attend this for me. It was just, she had something to say or a request, but she wasn't going to interrupt us. That is not default. That is a training issue.
Yeah. Another thing to know from in the young years when the children are asking why all the time, sometimes the question why is rebellion. And you don't actually, they can't really necessarily cognitively choose that they're in rebellion. They wouldn't tell you. You have to discern that this question is because I'm delaying my obedience for as long as I can, but in the question, they are expecting you to come down here and explain yourself. That's wrong. You don't do that, especially in the early years. When there is a command given and the child says why, you explaining yourself drops your authority down to their level. That's not what you're supposed to do. If you just, we had this with the foster kids. She would say why when I tell her chew your food, and the point was because she just is holding it in her mouth and she's not chewing her food. There was a lot going on there, but she would say why, like no, say okay.
And then she would eat the food.
And then she would eat the food.
Yeah. Well, and the idea here is, of course, that this takes advantage of parents who are high in nurturing, because you want to train your kids and teach your kids your ways. And so when your kids say why, a lot of parents are like, oh, let me tell you all the beautiful reasons why. But again, you're lowering yourself down to their level, especially in those moments when they're not asking why. They're saying, you explain to me why I must obey, and then I'll decide whether I want to obey or not. Versus they're really asking why, like, for greater understanding. We often, in these early years, we told them, you can ask why while obeying.
That was probably more in the middle years.
It was toward the end of this year of this as well. Just like, you're gonna be doing it, and then you can ask why I'm asking you to do that.
And that doesn't mean we never explain ourselves to children.
Correct.
Because God gives us His Word, explains who His character is, and we correct ourselves to that. We want to learn His values. So we do tell children, we explain our thought processes all the time, especially as homeschoolers. We are talking and teaching and training our children all of the time. Actually, one time I was in Texas somewhere, I was going into a public restroom, and I could hear this mom teaching her son or daughter in the stall, and I was like, oh, she'd be a really good homeschooler. And I told her that, and she's like, oh yeah, we homeschool our 4 children. I'm like, oh yeah. She's teaching and training her children, which I thought was just so beautiful. That's something that we do all the time. And if you're at home with your kids, that's what you do all day long. So you are explaining your ways to your children. But when they're making a demand on you, or you have given them a command or an expectation, they don't get to ask why. Just say okay.
Well, we talked about this earlier about the next point is that we have, we require our kids at that age to participate. That's age appropriate. And again, we talked about this one in terms of competence. We want to allow and encourage them to be a part of chores, to be a part of sometimes it's just maintenance around the house. When the kids were little, we were repainting our house, and they were out there with the little scrapers and scraping the house and getting the house prepped and ready for paint. They were out there when we were painting. They were rolling, and it's like the girls were young. They were probably like 4 or 5, yeah. And it's like that's going to take so much more time to do this. It always takes
more time.
And I just need to encourage you to let that go. You're just going to have to let that go.
That's actually, change your mind about it.
It's beautiful.
It's actually our joy, even though it takes 10 times longer to unload the dishwasher when your little toddler is helping you. Change your mind that these are the years that you're establishing that bonded relationship, and you're teaching and training your children that they can participate. They can act upon the world. They can join with the family values. We are a family who works. We are a family who does chores. We are a family who keeps the house well and keeps it tidy. And we do the hard things in the right order. And the little 2-year-old and 3-year-old and 4-year-old get to add to the value of it. And they feel so proud of themselves. That's how you're building competence. Oh, another thing to think about is speech. When children are young, obviously they are learning to speak. And this idea, I want for you to have ownership over how your kids articulate their words. When you can deal with it when it's early, that is extremely helpful for them as they age and for adults to engage with them. The pediatrician will tell you that insurance does not pay for different speech impediments until they meet a
Like
certain
speech
age.
therapists?
Yeah, they won't pay for someone to do that. And so the pediatrician will tell you, oh, it works itself out. They'll eventually learn. And that may be to some degree, but that's not taking into consideration all of the other ripple effects of children not being able to speak well and speak clearly to adults, because then they're not engaging well and people don't understand them. So it's actually really important that you don't wait for a speech therapist to pay for your child, to teach your children and for the insurance to pay. The point is, you can get on YouTube and just look up how to teach my child to say the R sound. And then there it is. It's all there. When we had the foster kids especially, there were a couple of speech impediments that were really difficult to understand. And so we just spent I guess it was a few months, but we just spent a few months, and actually he was able to say his R's really quickly, which was great because his name has an R in it, and it matters. He felt very proud that he could say his name the way everyone else would say his name. It's really valuable.
Yeah, and again, this is ownership for you guys. I mean, just have this idea that you don't have to wait for the experts to take care of things. In this day and age, there's so much resources available to parents, especially in this area.
What I didn't know is, with our kids, I didn't take the binky away from Peter early because he had two sisters that also had binkies, and I did not want to have to manage that and fight that and take it all apart. So anyway, he was not even 3 years old when Amelia was born, but eventually somebody told me that, see that picture of Peter where his teeth don't close? That's the binky. I'm like, what? I didn't even notice. I thought he was smiling like that on purpose. I thought his mouth was just not closed. No, the back teeth were closed and the front teeth were open. And so I'm like, Peter, I showed him, look in the mirror. You see how your teeth don't close? You see how mine do close? The binky is ruining your bite. We have to throw it away. And I did make him throw it away. There's an idea in the culture that you just help them to feel good about sending the binky to the binky fairy, and it'll give the binky to somebody else. That is not setting expectations. It's not telling your child that you're the one. At the time, though, I was like, we have to take it away. You have to throw it away. And he did, and it was sad for 3 days, and then he was fine, but he was 4 years old. And I didn't know that his speech had not developed well because of his bite. And so we had to spend time teaching him how to say the S sound instead of, he would say dirt. For the SH sound, that was dirt, he would say dirt. And for shirt and shark, he used the D sound. And so we had to correct that one, and we started playing the marshmallow game, because then he would get to have a marshmallow every time he could practice saying the sounds. And then we moved on to the other sounds that he had a problem with, and actually his speech increased dramatically in about 4 months, because it became fun for him. We would just do it practicing in the car. I don't even have marshmallows or Skittles, but now we'll just practice a few things, and he learned to speak them. So this is something that I think is really important, that parents nowadays they're just allowing those things to develop, but it's having longer consequences than we are making connections with.
Right. And then I'd say lastly is that during this early years, when it comes to things like screens, whether it be TV or phones or tablets and that sort of stuff, I would just almost say don't use your screens to babysit your child. If you're going to the store, we see it all the time. We go to Costco, mom's got the kid right in the shopping cart, and they just give them their phone, and then so they can just look around, and the kid's distracted. And what I noticed with our kids, because we didn't have smartphones when our kids were little, it's you're losing opportunity to have FaceTime with your child.
Mm-hmm.
They're right there, and you can sing to them and talk to them, and oh, look at that, look at this, and you can start pointing things out. By doing this, it does alleviate, now you can focus on what you need to focus on, but man, you don't know what you're losing out on. Same thing with like, not allowing certain video games. We had a rule in our house that if and we didn't really play video games when the kids were little. We didn't do that at all. And I would say that any video game that they play by themselves with no one else in the room is a no. They can play with their siblings, they can play with parents, but it's going to be communal
But
type
not
of
really
thing.
in the early years.
Not in the early years,
They
not as
had
much.
that little Mobico. I forgot about that. They
Yeah,
had
little
this little
Mobico.
handheld thing. But that,
But we didn't buy 3 of them.
that's true. But the other thing is that pediatricians will tell you,
Oh,
or
yeah.
the American Psychological Association or Pediatrician Association will tell you, you should limit their media intake to about 2 hours a day.
That's a little high.
That is really exceedingly high. Now, at the time, I was like, oh, I really need it because there's so much chaos. We had 3 children in 3 years. There were toys everywhere, all over the place. And I felt like it was valuable to break up the day. We do this, then we have some TV time, then we do this, and then whatever. I would say now, knowing now the progression of television and the progression of like how they develop it and how they make it addictive and what it's doing in the brain is exceedingly harmful for the brains of children. If I were having young children now, I probably wouldn't even have a TV in the house. We definitely don't turn it on. Actually, we were always very careful to be very aware of what was on the TV and not allow anything that would plant the wrong kind of seeds, including not having TV shows, even TV shows that portray the father as the dumb guy, or portraying children as the problem solvers apart from their parents. This is a very, very common thing among TV shows nowadays, that the children are the ones that are smart and they come up with all these great ideas, and then the parents are like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, I'm gonna follow you and we're gonna play all the time, instead of, nope, we don't entertain ourselves all the time. That's not our value. Our value is that we work, that we're responsible, and we do playtime when it's appropriate, but it's not how we organize our day. We don't organize our day around play.
Also shows that had kids being disrespectful to parents, where they're sassing their parents. We were very careful, like, you're not gonna watch that show. And some of these shows are, they're made for kids. They're like on Nickelodeon, on Disney. And it's like, well, you would think like, well, this isn't some secular thing like NBC or a major network. Like this is a show for kids. Doesn't matter.
It's a basic no.
Yeah.
Anything on Nickelodeon, anything on Disney, no. I don't even know about Disney Plus. Some of the Disney movies are teaching the same thing.
Right.
But the Disney TV shows where the teenagers have all of the wisdom and the parents are fools, that's a no. That's not teaching the right values. And the other point about that is when your children are on a screen, they are not doing other important things. It's not developing their brains the way they need to develop. And one statistic or idea that I was reading is that children have to have playtime that's like unsupervised, that's not structured. They need to be able to work out their social skills with other kids. And it used to be that they would do that, in preschool and kindergarten. That's not what they're doing anymore. They're more focused on academics. And so there's less unstructured play. But it's very important for kids to be having a time where they play with other kids or they play with themselves, and they are learning about the world and they're learning self-control.
And they're being creative and they're learning to negotiate with other kids.
They're not doing that. And that is detrimental long-term. Okay, we can skip that.
Okay. So the middle years, when you're, what ages would you say that's roughly?
Well, maybe 6 to 12.
Okay. Yeah, so what we see oftentimes is that in our culture, sports is given a high place of honor. That you get kids into sports. It's often seen as like, we're going to get them into sports so that they don't do the bad things. So we're going to get them into sports because that teaches them certain things. And what we have found, what we saw is this over importance on a sport. And the sports nowadays is very all consuming. You can play soccer all year round. You can play softball all year round. And it's becoming more and more common that in these earlier years, between 6 and 12, that's the standard. Like, if you're going to sign up for soccer, the implication is that you're going to play 12 months out of the year. Like, you're going to be in club, and you're going to play this, you're going to play in that. And that is not good for the brains of small children, because they need to have an eclectic view of their abilities and to be able to do many different things, instead of just saying that we're going to circle entire lives around one thing. And so what we try to do in our family is to try to do sports or activities that could be done together. Instead of us, like this, my daughter does this sport and they do this sport. We actually just recently were talking about a family where they had like 3 kids, and none of the kids wanted to do sports that the other ones were doing because they wanted to have their own thing. Which, if you think about it, it's like, okay, you don't want to follow in someone else's footsteps, and you want to be more individualistic. But think practically, that's going to divide families. And now one parent's driving that kid to soccer practice, this kid to softball, that kid to lacrosse, and the whole weekend is consumed with the fact that we're all doing something, and we sound like we're really active people, but no one's there's no interaction on the few days of the week that we get interaction.
It just occurred to me, somehow we missed the idea of self-reliance. Did we already talk about that?
I don't think so.
Did we talk about that? The self-reliance and independent decision makers? I know we mentioned we're not trying to raise independent decision makers last night, but I had a screen and somehow I deleted it apparently. But this is back in the big idea section. The culture wants to say that our children should grow up to be independent decision makers. We want them to grow up to be self-reliant. And I am going to tell you, I believe that is a lie from the pit of hell. It is not our job to be self-reliant. Oh, see, we just skipped it. I'm sorry.
There it is. Thank you.
There it is. Thank you. That's a lie. We are not supposed to be self-reliant. That is like outside of the authority. We are supposed to be reliant on God. We're supposed to be reliant on the Word. God is our provider. We're not the ones who provide for ourselves. Even when we are looking for a job, it's God who gives us our provision. We want to keep our eyes focused on the Lord and not on ourselves. And another thing about being an independent decision maker or being self-reliant is it's actually causing us to depend on our own human reasoning. That's something that God has taught me about a lot in the last year, that I have relied on how I can reason something out instead of surrendering it to the Lord. So the idea that's taught in the culture of self-reliance and independent decision-making, actually where it leads is to difficulty in your marriage. We're supposed to have mutual submission. We're not supposed to rely on our own understanding. We're not supposed to make decisions independently. And if you've been raised to be an independent decision maker, that's really child-centered parenting. But it leads to a real difficult struggle for your early years of marriage because you haven't learned that you're supposed to submit yourself one to another. And the reason I thought about that is because even in the idea of sports and this, one kid doesn't want the sibling to be involved in that sport, that is foolish thinking. It does cause division in the family, but it also is isolating. And it allows the child to think that her values are more, and it actually shows selfishness in the heart. We need to be observing that. Oh, you think that? Well, no. Now your sister's definitely going to ski with you because you didn't want. No, okay.
Well, and we're not down on sports. I mean, our kids are involved in sports. They ski race, we golf, we play pickleball, we've done mountain biking, all that kind of stuff. But we've chosen that the highest priority for us is that we do things as a family. And what we often find is that parents allow their kids to fragment and to do things that are outside of what we typically do as a family. An example just recently is Amelia got done with ski racing, and she had a friend who was going to then go do like lacrosse. And she says, "Well, I want to do like a spring sport. I want to do lacrosse." Kristen never played lacrosse. I never played lacrosse. I don't know anything about it. It's not something we've ever done. And I'm like, well,
we wanted to say yes because
we love her. Yeah. And yet I thought to myself, but we do other things. Like we personally play golf, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to say no to lacrosse. You're going to do lacrosse. She's like, well, I already have a friend in lacrosse. I said, you're a very likable person. You'll make friends in golf. You have friends you haven't met yet, right? They're just waiting for you to show up, and you'll make friends with those people. But this is what we do together versus now you're going to be separate and away from all these sort of things. She's never done it before. And I thought, well, why start all of that when we're already primed and geared toward this area? And I want to give you the freedom as parents to say no. No to good things. I mean, lacrosse could have been awesome, but this is what we do as a family, and I'm gonna steer her toward that direction because this is what we do. That's your prerogative to do. And the culture would say, well, you're just imparting your values on your kids.
That's right.
That's right. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm imparting my values on my kids. Right.
Yes. Okay, we're doing it. Okay.
Boredom.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're okay. We talked a little bit about boredom earlier, but I want to bring this up again because boredom is showing in the heart that you're not satisfied. And if you're not satisfied, that means you're showing that you don't have gratitude. And we want to link gratitude to joy and happiness. It's extremely important that we teach our children to be grateful so that we correct their mind. If they say they're bored, no, you're not bored. Tell me 10 things that you're grateful for, and it changes the heart. So
this is important during the middle years because this is where I think they can begin to understand the concepts of being grateful and leading to happiness and joy. We live in a culture that is completely ungrateful for what we have. We live in America. We have every conceivable convenience at our fingertips, and yet we have a generation of kids. And when I say kids, I mean I'm working with some of them. They're in their 20s. And I was just thinking, there's a nurse that I see every once in a while, and one of the hats that she wears, like one of the surgical caps, it just says the word on it, and it's like, and it's in bright colors and everything else is really kind of pretty, but it's like you're 24 years old, you work at a hospital, you're making good money, you live in America, you have all these things at your fingertips, and what you're displaying to the world is like life is just so difficult and hard. And then I'm happy to share about my trip to Mexico. And like these people have nothing. Like they are not thriving in any sense of the word. They are just surviving. They're getting like $150 a week. She makes that in like a few hours at work. And it's like, if we allow kids at this age, where does this lead is the question. If we see that you're bored and you're ungrateful, it leads to being young adults who it's like, my life sucks. When in all outward appearances, your life is really amazing, and people would trade your life for their life in a heartbeat. And so you as parents need to put seeds into them like, your life is amazing, we're great parents, you're doing fine,
everything.
you have everything, you're not allowed to be bored, tell me 10 things you're grateful for. Let's do all the things.
And sometimes boredom is related just to self-pity. Don't allow your kids to remain in self-pity. Tell them what to think, and it's not that the world is acting on them. That doesn't teach them agency.
Right.
You have to get them out of that self-pity idea.
And the boredom is really kind of a victim statement. It's like,
Yes.
things aren't happening in my life that I want to see happening. Well, go make it happen.
Yeah.
This is your favorite.
Oh. Yes, okay. Well, the next point is that we require participation in our house. And we used to have a chant. Participation, participation. And the kids didn't like it. But they corrected themselves to it because it's more enjoyable in life to require yourself to participate, to require yourself to enter in. And some of that is a little bit of a joke, but when you see kids like, say we're in Kid Life and you see a kid doesn't want to participate in the worship and he's over there sitting on the floor, that's not allowed. We don't allow that because that is maintaining your own opinion about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, and you're allowing them to stay in their bad mood, their bad attitude. So for me, that's something that I would correct. Nope, you're going to participate. You're going to stand here and you're going to sing. You know, because when we're seeing that kids don't want to participate, you got to ask yourself what's in their heart right now. Are they shy? Get rid of that. They don't get to be shy. You have to put yourself out there. That's what teaches them agency. If they're an adult who's shy, they're not acting on the world in the way that God intended for them to, because he wants us to have good fruit. He wants us to have good relationships and to be able to engage in all of the areas that are for his good and for his glory and for our good. So it's not okay that we allow kids just to not participate because they're shy. We understand that. We can walk alongside them and help them to not be shy. We can make introductions so they have a friend or whatever. We can like be loving about it, but we don't allow that idea of not participating to remain, because it's showing that there's something in their heart that is not corrected.
Well, and this is different than the early years where we said participation like in chores and that sort of stuff. This is in activities as a family, and not wanting to disconnect, which, in the middle years, what we see obviously in the culture is that a lot of kids at this age are getting their own tablet or cell phone, they get earbuds, they check out, and they're gone. And it's like, you as good parents are like, we're not doing that. I'm not getting you headphones. I'm not getting you a phone.
You don't get to just sit in the golf cart while the rest of us golf. You check your attitude, you fix it, and you go out there. And if you're not going to fix your attitude, you're going to have 10 push-ups or 15 or 20.
Right.
They don't do that anymore. They have actually, and this is the next one. Oh, that's in the later years. But we taught them from early that they have to choose their attitude. And part of that is correcting it. When you see there's a wrong attitude, you correct it. And this idea of participation is basically putting in their minds that they are going to do what you ask them to do, and they're going to have a good attitude about it.
Which obviously does not come naturally. You have to teach that.
No.
It's not something that they're going to like, I'll do it, but I just won't have a good attitude about it. Wrong. You have to have a good attitude about it. You got to change your mind. You got to choose your attitude. We talked about this just a little bit, like, no social media, no phones at this age. Even though everyone else in their class has one, you're going to be different. We don't want to look like the culture. We want to be different. Don't give them earbuds. Don't give them their individual music, because, like I said, it's teaching them to just withdraw from everything else and to check out. And we're not going to do that. We're going to say you're going to be actively participating in everything else that we as a family are doing.
Velcro barbs. They're not growing when they're plugging themselves into the media. We talked a little bit about that last night. Mm-hmm. The idea of the Velcro with the fuzzy side and the barbed side. Those barbs won't develop natural, they're not necessarily going to develop. They have to develop them. That's part of the brain development. And media and allowing them to listen to their own music, like when you're in the car and everybody wants to listen to their own music and they've got their earbuds in, that is not going to bring the fruit that you want for your family. Mm-hmm. You have to engage in some of those irritating circumstances where they're fighting in the back because somebody wants to listen to this or somebody's touching me or whatever. Don't give them something to plug into so that it avoids the asking the question, are we there yet? Actually, you can tell them, you may not ask me the question, are we there yet, until you see it says 2:30 on the clock. Then you can ask me.
Yeah, we did that all the time.
Because you hear people get so irritated, are we there yet? And they started, taking money from their kids. If you're going to ask me, then I'm going to take money every time you ask me. Well, just tell your kids what the expectation is. You don't get to ask that until it says 2:30, like when we were driving to Whistler. It's an 8 or 10 hour drive. So we didn't want to hear it the whole way. Okay.
The great thing is when it became 2:30 and they said, are we there yet? Because they were waiting. They were watching the time roll by. And then my answer could be exciting. It's like, yeah, we're like 10 minutes away. And they're like, they're all excited. We're finally there. Like they've been dying to ask this question for 8 hours. But again, it's like you as parents get to set the expectation. They get to go, I can't ask the question until then, but I can't wait to ask that question. And then I get to give the good answer. So it's really setting yourself up.
Not giving them permission to plug into their devices and listen to their own music is not creating the barbs for the Velcro. They need those barbs in developing in their brain to be really great adults who have great relationships, who are still connected with you and connected with others.
Well, one little story to say about this is that when we took long trips, we had one of those screens that would drop down, and we did have earphones, but I think we had one, and I think it broke, and so the kids could never actually get that to work, and we didn't want to plug it through the sound system because then we'd have to listen to a movie that we didn't have a chance to watch. So This is what I mean.
We've seen it 100 times.
This is where, again, you have authority and to set the expectations. The kids would watch the movie with no sound. And they would be happy because it was that or no movie. And so Kristen and I could have a conversation in the front seat, and the kids would be back there doing this with no sound, no sound going on. But oddly enough,
that's fascinating. That helps with memory.
yeah,
Like
they would remember the
They're
conversations.
remembering, and it's learning a skill of memorization. That was an accidental.
And it didn't harm our kids. Our kids aren't like less than because they didn't watch Cars 17 times with sound. But I mean, again, you get to set the tone for what
But
you
we
expect.
also only ever allowed a movie in the car when we were on a road trip.
Oh, yeah, to the store, just look out the
Yeah.
window.
No.
Or we would talk to them. I mean, this is an opportunity to like have conversations with your kids. Even though you're not face to face with them, you have alone time with your kids. You have a captive audience. And sometimes they make silly comments, and sometimes you have really beautiful conversations in a 10-minute ride. And there's this idea of like quality versus quantity, but you don't get to quality without quantity. You have to have multiple times
Just
in there.
manufacture quality conversation.
It doesn't come from nowhere.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Two things here. So in that age, I'm gonna speak about this. So no video games. We're anti-video games in the sense of if it's a game console, what you're teaching your children is accomplishments based off of nothing. They're not really achieving anything. Just because they beat the final boss.
400 levels.
Yeah, who cares?
It's irrelevant.
It doesn't provide any skill whatsoever. I mean, true skill is being competent in actual things. And the chances of your kid being like an expert gamer and making a living off of that is 0.0005, I'll give it 0.005%.
Even if it's a higher percent, that's not what we want for our children.
No.
That's not a good way to add value to the world, is that you become a social influencer and people are watching. It's actually nothing. You didn't produce anything. You didn't, like this whole
You didn't
idea.
provide beauty. You didn't provide goodness. I mean, when we go to Mexico, a lot of the kids who've been there have been in, they played a lot of video games in their life, a lot of board games, whatnot, and yet they don't know how to swing a hammer. They don't know how to hit it to saw. They don't know how to read a tape measure.
Or to use a shovel. I didn't know you had to teach that.
Right.
But you do. You have to teach how to use a shovel. I hired a kid one day because my body was hurting and I needed somebody to dig holes for the blueberries I was planting. And I had to, he was 14. I'm like, oh, is it rude for me, a woman, to teach a 14-year-old how to use a shovel? I don't know. But I did anyway because I was paying him.
Yeah.
You gotta, wait, now I need you to redag that hole because it's not in the line. I didn't realize I had to teach him how to make a line, make it straight, because I want a garden that's organized.
We all laugh, but it's like these are skills that must be taught. And
Yeah,
and
they
those are
must be taught.
actual real skills. Those are life-giving skills. Like when we take the kids to Mexico and they build a house, you change someone's life.
Yeah.
They have a different life now because of what you did and what you learned. So that's actually really important. Last thing.
Just a second.
Okay.
One of the things, the idea with the video games, I know that young boys especially want to play video games. The kind of the rule that we had for that was, well, it developed over time, but you don't get to play a video game unless someone's in the room with you playing, that you're doing an act together. So you're not going to play online. We did allow Minecraft a little bit when the 3 kids were all on their own, whatever, and they did it together. But this idea of being online and playing with a community that you've never met, or maybe you have met, like even some of your friends in school, you want to get online. If you're not in the same room, you're not actually developing the barbs the way you think you are. You're having camaraderie, you're killing each other, which I don't respect that style of video games. I don't think it's teaching the right lesson to kids, but I mean, anyway, some of them specifically that are very popular are a hard pass. We did not allow our kids to play some of those first-person shooter games and like Fortnite and things like that.
That really
It's an
wasn't around
absolute
either.
no.
Yeah.
And so, but we would allow them to play together at our house or wherever. If they were at someone else's house, that's when they were allowed to play games. But we still had rules for what they were allowed to play.
What do you want to do?
Oh no, we're just gonna keep going.
Okay. So at this time in the middle years, also we teach our kids about money and about how to steward their money well. We didn't give allowances, but we would give money for certain things like certain projects that they did. But
There
we
was extra that wasn't like a standard thing.
correct. But what we and I'm not anti-allowance or anything like that. Just something we didn't choose to do. But one of the things we taught them is that how to spend their money, not just this is your money, you can spend it any way you want to, because again, it goes back to independent decision makers, and we want them to know that their money is from the Lord, and that certain 10% goes to the church, and that they have to actually be discerning about thinking about how they're going to spend their money, instead of just spending on their whims. Like, I want candy, I want this.
They did not have permission to spend their money at their own will. They had to ask us permission if they can spend their money on that. And when you don't have parameters early on, and they have $1 and they want to spend it, will you take me to the dollar store? That stuff is trash. And if you're allowing them to spend their money at the dollar store, you're not actually teaching them the value of money. They don't get that exchange. And eventually, when Amelia was, I don't know, she was probably 8 years old, she had $3 and she wanted to spend something at the dollar store, but she thought to herself, okay, I'm going to keep $2 and I'm going to spend $1. And she bought herself some gum or something, and then it was over, and she was like, I spent a whole $1 on that, and it lasted me like 30 minutes. And it was the most beautiful lesson. She had learned to value that. I'm going to keep what I have, and I'm going to save. And so our kids have learned to be savers and to weigh the decisions. Do I want to spend this money? So kind of this idea here is you have permission to tell your children no. It's not their money. They are not independent decision makers. It's God's money. How are we going to steward this? He did give us money, and so we can spend it on things that bring satisfaction and joy and delight. That's okay. But you as parents need to know you have permission to tell them, no, we are not buying that. Oh, okay, so the last one for the middle years is we want to help you to think about how to not put into the minds of your children to be boy crazy or girl crazy, because it leads to bad places. We want to think about not talking to young kids about, oh, that boy is so cute, look, wouldn't it be so fun if you got to date or you got to get married? These are not thoughts that we are putting into their minds, and we are actually correcting that away from a specific person, especially. If it's okay for them to have a crush, and I'm not saying that they can't have crushes, but how we would think about that with their thoughts is we would ask them, what kind of characteristics do you see in that young man that you would value in a husband? Is that young man, how is he like daddy? Is he gracious? Does he give deference to other people? Does he let other people go first? Does he share his things? Is he wild, or is he rebellious? A lot of times in our society, the rebellious ones are the ones that are the attractive ones. We want to correct our kids' ideas away from that consistently. And actually, I heard one parent was saying to his son, oh, you better eat that. You don't want the girls to see you not eating your food. Well, this kid was young, and so that is planting a seed of, oh, I better be aware of girls and what girls are thinking of me. Also, it was using manipulation to get the son to eat the food. So partly I'm saying we have to be very careful about addressing those desires and those natural things. Kids are going to be looking, but we want to be the ones not to be putting those ideas in and then to correct them.
Well, and this is the time, especially in the later of the middle years, of just where you start to see girls, we call them aggressive girls who are actively pursuing boys and calling them and trying to get their attention.
And being very handsy.
Yep. And also, like, the bad boys, the kids who are rebellious. A lot of girls tend to be attracted to those. And you as parents need to point them out, like, she's an aggressive girl. That's a hard no. Like, she's calling you, she's doing all this stuff. That is trouble, trouble, trouble. We're not doing that. And we walked through that with several of our kids.
Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna stop at noon for lunch. We may try to do the rest of what we don't get through in the question and answer session, but we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes.
Okay, the later years, teenagers are our favorite.
Mm-hmm.
It is the best time to be a parent because you get to see all of the beautiful fruit that you've been sowing all of these years. You've had intention, you've corrected, you've instructed, you've cried, you've prayed, all of that. The fruit is coming when your kids are teenagers, and it can be really beautiful.
We had a couple at our church who said that to us years ago, that teenagers are the best. I'm like, what are you talking about? No one says that. Everyone says how hard it is during the teenage years. But they were talking about the fact that if it's the fruit of all of the years of the hard decisions, now you start to get into that area of like the easy life. It's like, oh, this is beautiful. Because a lot of the times, what we talked about earlier about sometimes I can't really share my ways with them because they don't really quite get mentally and cognitively what I'm trying to get at. At the teenage years is where it begins, where we can actually have really good, deep conversations. Like, they can process, they do make connections, and you are able to have these wonderful times together. Like we talked about last night, like the structure of the bedtime we had when they were little. Now they're teenagers, and they come into our room at night, and we get to have these deep conversations about school, about friends, about people of the opposite sex that they're attracted to, and considering dating. We have these deep conversations because it's like that's where we are in life, but we haven't closed the door. Like, well, you're teenagers, and a lot of the culture sees kids as a burden, and they can't wait until they're gone so the parents can get their lives back. That's what I see in the culture at my work. It's like, I just can't. He just needs to move out, and he just needs to get out of here. It's like, well, what a terrible investment that you made. Right? You invested 20 years of your life on this child, and the end result is, I can't wait till they're gone. Really, the result would be is that I want them to stick around. I want them to be a part of my life forever, because no relationship I'm ever going to have is going to be like a son or a daughter that I have. That's a very special relationship. That's a relationship that's intended to last throughout at least my entire life and most of their lives. And God sees the generation as that it becomes like a son, a husband, a father, and then eventually a patriarch. Like the matriarch and the patriarch of the family would have continued influence over generations.
Okay, so the first concept is, I think what people mean when they say they don't like teenagers is, well, one, they're opinionated, and two, they're disgusted. All the time. They share their opinion, and did you see that guy? It's something that I see commonly, that teenagers can be disgusted, and we don't want to allow that. We still have to, this also goes back to the gratitude. It's very important that they learn young and consistently that we are grateful, but also we correct the discussion, that disgusting idea, because they still often see things in black and white. They don't really understand circumstances. So even when I see, and actually one teenager I really love, she will make the one comment that sounds, you can see the disgusting coming out of her face, and when I just this guy might only she's like, oh yeah, she takes the correction so well. And so like there's beauty in still correcting wrong ideas and wrong, so they still have these blinders. They haven't like opened up their mind yet because they haven't actually experienced anything. Like, it is a big deal to go to school and graduate, but it's only big to teenagers because they've never done anything big before. And it is a big deal to graduate high school, but now that we're adults, we're like, that was so nothing. It was actually nothing. But it's not, right? It's a big deal to kids to graduate high school, but it's still just like this. This is all they can see. They can't even actually think 5 years ahead. They don't know where they're going to be 5 years. I mean, we actually don't really know where we're going to be 5 years, but we know we have kids. We know we're parents, and married, we know lots of things about our life that they don't know yet because it's so much in the future. So we still want to correct the way they think and bring the context that they can't see. Open the mind, open the perspective.
Well, and they have a lot of black and white thinking, and black and white thinking often leads to contempt. Because you
Yes.
can't see the other side, and so I can't believe he did that, so therefore they're bad, and you go down that road. And with teenagers, they do this a lot. They just have very bipolar thinking. It's either good or it's bad. And obviously, as we become adults, what we realize is that the world is actually not very black and white. It's a lot of gray, because we can see the other perspective of other people and how they might feel about this, and we can empathize greater, and we can go, gosh, maybe in this situation it would look like this. But kids at the teenage level, they're quick to make quick decisions about things that they have very little understanding about. And your job as parents is to offer a counter perspective, even in terms of like the devil's advocate type of a thing. Like, well, what if this is going on? Why would they perhaps act that way? And have them start to think to themselves, well, what would be the reason that they could possibly act that way that wouldn't be that they're just a big fat jerk? And like, oh, well, it could be this or this or this or this. And all of a sudden that builds on empathy. And your job is to train them in mercy, like to see things from different perspectives and not to be disgusted by, like, I can't believe he said that. Well, what do you think was going on in his life that could have permitted him to say something like that? Maybe he's not just a big jerk. Maybe he's got a lot going on.
Okay, can we do this next one in 4 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, dating is training for divorce.
So, again, we keep on beating this drum, is that we want them to know that they are not independent decision makers about their spouse. And I didn't quite understand this for a long time about dating as training for divorce, but dating, what it means is that I'm going to try you on for a while and see how it goes. And when we think about how it works out in the world, we have a lot of people who are not married living together as married people. They're having kids together, they're doing everything married-wise, but the problem is that without that commitment to a long-lasting, deep commitment of marriage, basically what it means is that when things go sideways, you're free to go or I'm free to go if something else better
don't
comes
hate me
along.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this idea of marriage meaning that you're going to throw everything at it and nothing is going to get in your way. You're giving yourself over to this other person. I mean, those are the vows, right? Like better or worse, basically hell or high water. You have to decide, who do I want in the boat with me when high water comes?
Yeah.
Like it's for sure her. If everything turns sideways, I'm with her. Instead of like, well, this doesn't work out very well and I'm going to try it out.
Any fun.
Right. I'm not really having the fun that I thought I was going to have.
And dating, oftentimes the motivation is, it's fun. I see everybody else having fun. They're going out on dates. They're having fun together, going to the football game or whatever it is. I can see that it's fun, but it's still practice for divorce later because you're interacting for as long as it's fun for you, and then you're not fun for me anymore. And so it's kind of an idea that we want to shift away from dating. That doesn't mean that we don't want our kids to be looking for good marriage partner options and to be discovering that. But it's a different mindset of, it's not about fun. It's about, do you have the character qualities currently, and do I see that you are on that trajectory of increase with the Lord especially? The idea of missionary dating is a hard pass. No.
What do you mean by that?
Don't do that. Well, you mean explain missionary dating? The idea that I'm a Christian, this guy's not a Christian, but if
Yet.
I bring him to
Yeah.
church, then maybe he'll become a Christian, and then we can get married because I really like this guy. He's really fun. There's a lot of quality people who aren't Christian. I am not saying that they are not quality, but it's not right. And I know this because I spent 3 years dating one non-Christian and then 2 years dating another non-Christian, and all of that time I knew I had committed, I'm going to marry a Christian, and I really hoped that they would become Christian. I actually don't know whether they ever did or not. But when Barry and I started dating, I was like, oh, this is why they said that. We have all the same values. Oh, and so within about 4 months' time, I knew I would marry Barry. I was like, there's no deal breakers. and I could list off the things. It took him longer to figure out that I was the best one for him. But he knows
I'm a
it
little
now.
slow.
You were a little slow at the time. Cautious is okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to be cautious.
Well, and what we've told our kids all along is that we get a say in the people that they're thinking about dating and maybe even considering to be a spouse, because I think everyone understands this, but it has to be said, is that when you get married, you marry the family.
Yes.
You are married to their parents, you're married to their brothers and sisters, they're a part of your family now. And I think it's the fact that, like, well, what does it matter if, like, it's our relationship, it doesn't really matter what's going on. That's such a naive view of reality.
Yes.
The reality is that our families really have to commingle together.
Yeah.
Not obviously like in the same house and every day, but like we all have to get along. And so if my son is dating someone who's going to lead him away from us, and I'm like, she doesn't really share our values. She might be a Christian, she might be a really good gal, but it's like, but there's something about her that if there's something about her that I think she doesn't really kind of fit in with us, I'm going to have a discussion with him and go, this may not be the right relationship. So, and I'm going to walk with him through that.
And sometimes this will not lead to the right place, which we've had conversations of that over the years.
But we've told our kids early that we get a voice. We told them early, like, we get a say in who you're going to potentially marry, because they're marrying us too.
Yeah.
And we want to be a part of their lives, and we need to mix together. And that's hard, but if you plant that seed early, it bears fruit into these years.
Okay, so it's noon, and so it's time for us to break. Do you think we can get through it in 45 minutes, or do we really need an hour? Okay, so let's try to be back here by 12:45, because we still have the later years to finish before we jump into
Not
the
much,
question
just
and
a little
answer.
bit.
Well, I want to be able to do both, and Pam needs a...
I just want to, parents, get your kids first before you get in line in the tent, and let the child care workers go before you so they can eat, get a break, get back to receive your kids afterwards. So yeah, 45 minutes.
And tell them thank you.